Okay, let us start with the input tax credit. Now, as far as ITC is concerned, now we have to see what is the definition of ITC. As you can see, we have talking about include different variety of taxes. That is first IGST, then you have CGST, then you have SGST, then you have union territories, that is UTGST. So these are variety of taxes which are paid, and finally the cess, that is compensation cess. So all these are available as ITC. But for taking ITC, now what is the meaning of ITC, which we have seen in last lecture, that it is nothing but against my output liability I will adjust my input taxes paid and I can take credit for it. But for taking the credit, there are certain conditions which are required to be fulfilled. And what are those conditions that we have to check one by one? So quickly go through these 4 points and then we'll discuss it together. Check the conditions for ITC. Now see, the first condition, as we can see here, it says that he should be in possession of the tax invoice. That means if you are properly availing, if you want to take the credit, then you have to have a proper tax invoice for the same. If the tax invoice is not available, then you are not eligible for the credit. Secondly, he should have received the goods and services or both. That means let us say A is providing me goods, then I should have received those goods, then I can take credit. Or if it is services, then I should have received those services. Next is the supplier should have actually paid the tax charge in respect of the supply to the government. So let us say A is supplying goods to me, so I am supposed to pay him. He's supposed to provide me goods and services, and then most importantly, A is supposed to pay the taxes to the government. If A has failed to make the payment, then the ITC will be in a problem. Finally, he should have submitted it in the written which is furnished by him. So he should show that as an output tax liability, and secondly, I should show that as an input tax credit. If both the figures matches with each other, then ITC is available to be taken. Where the goods against an invoice are received in lots or installment, it is necessary to remember that the ITC is available when the last amount of installment is received, then you are eligible for taking the credit. So if you have not received the full lot at one stroke, so when you get the last installment, you are supposed to take ITC. Next, this point we have seen in last lecture, that as to how the ITC will be utilized. Now, first is IGST. So, IGST credit can be availed against IGST, then CGST, then SGST, and then UTGST. So, that is how my IGST credit can be used. On the contrary, regarding the remaining three credits, that is CGST, SGST, and UTGST, is available against the same plus against IGST. So, that is how we can offset the credit, and after offsetting the credit, whatever is remaining amount, that amount will be liable to be paid by the person. Okay, but the most important point which we have to see now is whether we are eligible for everything or every supply of goods and services. Are they eligible for ITC? So there are certain rules and regulations which we need to check one by one. First is the goods and services which are completely for business purposes, then obviously full ITC is available. But when it is a proportional TC, so when like the goods are supplied partly for business and partly for home consumption, or partly for private consumption. So when the goods are provided for partly for home consumption and partly for business, then only the proportionate credit is available to the extent to which the goods and services are used for business. Next is zero rated or exempted supplies. Now when I'm receiving exemptions, when I'm providing exempted product, then obviously my output is not taxable, and if my output is not taxable, can I take the input tax credit? No, because if output is not taxable, then ITC actually will not be made available. So what we need to consider is whether my services or whether my supply of goods is a taxable supply. If it is not a taxable supply, then ITC is not available. But this rule is not applicable for zero rated supplies. Zero rated supplies will include the export sales or sales made to SEZ or special, that is the special economic zone. Now this is specifically coming under zero rated because actually speaking this is not liable to pay tax, but they have considered zero rated because the zero rated indicates the goods or services are subject to GST, but for the timing the applicable GST rate is 0, and that is how ITC for these goods or these services is available. Why it is available? Naturally because you are providing the goods and services which are liable to taxes, but for the time being or currently the tax rate applicable is 0. So that is how the ITC is available for zero rated supplies. Next is motor vehicles. Now, as far as motor vehicles are concerned, if you are supplying motor vehicle or a conveyance, then you are not eligible for it. But there is a restriction that if I am into transportation business or if I am into passenger imparting training, flying, driving or navigation, and the person who is selling the cars or selling the vehicles, for them the ITC is available. So that means if I am using it for providing services like transportation, then credit is not available. But when I'm using the vehicles for supplying, for selling, so then ITC is available. Next is food, beverage, outdoor catering, beauty treatment, health services, cosmetic and plastic surgery. Now all these are not eligible for ITC. Only in situation where you are purchasing the services against these services and where the output services are taxed. For example, outdoor catering is purchasing a product from another person and that person is charging them GST. Now, if that person is charging GST and then I'm supplying product or service to another person, so then I'm eligible for taking ITC for the supply of goods by another person. Then you have membership of a club, health and fitness center. So if that is the situation, then ITC is not available on supply of membership of a club, health or fitness center because that is coming under or that is termed as, you can say, it's a personalized benefit which you are taking, which you are planning to take or which you have taken, and therefore department says you are not eligible for taking ITC against. Next is renter cab, life insurance and health insurance. So this is again categorized to be for the personalized services. And when it is personalized service, naturally the ITC will not be made available. However, where the government notifies the services which are obligatory for an employer to provide to its employees under any law for the timing in force, then such inward supply of goods and services of both of a particular category is considered as eligible supply for taking ITC. Only the insurance